Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Lemon Dew podcast. I'm Brie, and today I'm going to be doing an episode where I talk about the subject of autism and inadequacy. So, before I begin, I do want to apologise for the lack of updates to my podcast. As you may or may not know, to be honest, I've been feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally tired because of certain things that are going on in my real life. At the moment, my current job is going through a restructure, so my mind has been on the interview which I completed this week, and also my mind has been thinking about the future in terms of employment. So, what I've been doing is pretty much applying for other jobs because I don't know if I will have a job to go to after next month or this month. And even if I do somehow keep my current job, to be honest, I'm basically going through autistic burnout because I've had enough of my role, I'm bored of my job, I feel depressed going into work practically every day. And these are the signs where I realise that it is time for a change. And speaking of changes, I am working on the Etsy shop and I will soon release a TikTok shop where I will mostly sell miscellaneous items, mainly tech and other things as well. So, in terms of the future, I am now gravitating towards getting back into side hustles because I used to be quite consistent with those as a university student. And I'm also gravitating towards self employment because I realised that I don't want to rely on a traditional job when it comes to generating income anymore. I want to do something I love. And what I love the most is doing creative things like this podcast, my blog, which I've released recently. So you can find that in my card link because card is where I put all of my links for, I guess, social media and other external things like my blog and such. So you can find that on there. And of course, my YouTube channel as well. I'm still on YouTube. I'm still doing all of my creative stuff on there. So, yeah, I want to go on a self employment journey where I pretty much expand my creativity. So, now that I've pretty much explained everything, let's talk about the subject topic of autism and inadequacy. So, with inadequacy, it is the root of people's lives. And with autistic people, we tend to struggle more so with inadequacy. So, growing up as a child, I've always had low self esteem, having to adjust in a world which doesn't fit me because even though I'm human, I feel like an artificial human in the sense that I don't behave like everybody else. I don't think like everyone else as I process information differently. And there are many things that even now as an adult, I find difficult to understand. So, growing up and going through a very confusing education system, I've had low self esteem, mainly because people have always told me that I was incapable of doing things, like my teachers telling me I was going to fail my GCSEs, or there are times where I question whether I can do things as well as neurotypical people. And I've noticed this in my work recently, especially because since this whole, I guess, restructure things come about, I have been feeling inadequate about myself. I feel like my quality of work is shit. And I also feel that no matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I work in this job and other jobs, I am not valuable to any organization. I'm basically like a pawn in a chess game or a piece of trash that people can step over. And there are certain situations where I do feel this way, where I do feel like nothing I do is good enough. So, for example, when doing health and safety meeting minutes, everything was wrong, everything made no sense. And even though management did say that my minutes needed to flow and I had to use the right template and everything, I just started pretty much questioning myself, because normally this is a task I'm good at. And now it's like, because everything is wrong, I am not the best person for this task anymore, because what I'm doing is shit. If I touch anything or try to amend anything, it turns to shit. And it's the same thing when I'm trying to fill in appropriate adult forms, where again, if I'm not doing things correctly because I'm so used to doing things right the first time due to the perfectionist mentality, something is wrong with me. And I feel like people will get frustrated, even though I'm trying the best I can. It's again, it's not good enough. And at times, little things like this do make me feel very awful. I mean, I've noticed lately there are times where if everything or one little thing goes wrong at work, I end up going to the toilet to have basically a mental breakdown, because I am not doing things the way I'm supposed to. And I question, why can't I do tasks the same way as my colleagues can? Why can't I do this right? And sometimes as well, if there's no guidance from management, or if there are unclear instructions from, say, colleagues, I do get confused very easily because I don't know what's right and what's wrong. And then, I want to be able to produce quality work when I'm doing my job. But again, since this whole thing, I feel like I can't. And then, of course, not only do the mental breakdowns kick in, but the burnout kicks in as well. And I think this is part of the reason why I'm looking to leave my job now, because I'm going through it again. And speaking of going through it, although this is probably going to be saved for maybe another episode, I recently did a ADHD 360 assessment, and I found out I do have inattentive ADHD, hence why there are little things that I do, like fidgeting or feeling restless when I'm at work, or feeling frustrated with my work. So yeah, everything makes sense, but I still feel like crap. So, anyway, going back to the subject, I find that in this world, you have constant expectations as an autistic person. So, if you have autism or even some other form of neurodivergence, there is this constant need to maintain neurotypical standards, although your brain does not function in the same way as that of a neurotypical person. So at school, I had to fit in and be like all the other students. Because I was introverted, because I was quiet, that was seen as wrong. And it's the same thing at work. So, if you're going into a job interview, you can't mention anything about autism. And again, this is where my recruitment side comes in. So, if you mention anything to do with autism, anything to do with accommodations, your employer is just going to look at you like you've got two heads, and then they're going to be thinking, nope, I'm not hiring this person, because they will come with a lot of problems. And even if you somehow manage to get a job, because I mean, even now at times, I wonder how the hell I've managed to stay in some sort of employment without being fired, as I've only ever quit jobs. Again, there's the question of whether you should tell your employers that you have autism, because, they're going to be thinking your accommodations are going to cost too much. You are going to be a problem, because if, say, you're in a social job, like a receptionist job, like what I do, and you have a breakdown because someone's rude to you, your employer will question the ability to do your job, because at the end of the day, they don't really care about your problems. They just want bodies on site that can meet targets, because work is about targets, 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 and performing, because you have to adapt yourself to the specific role that the situation requires you to have, if that makes sense. So, even though there are times where I'm depressed at work, I have to perform. I have to play a character. Even though the neurotypical standards weigh me down on the inside, I don't have a choice. I have to play the whole, upbeat customer service staff member, or upbeat receptionist, or whatever, to distract people from thinking everything's okay. And to be honest, when most of my colleagues ask me if everything's all right, or how I'm doing, I just say, yeah, I'm all right, even though I know on the inside I am mentally tired, I'm depressed, I'm checked out, and I just don't want to be there. But again, it's about performing, and it's the same thing in every workplace. So, you can't really express yourself, you can't say your piece, you stick to the role you're supposed to have. And if you don't do that, something is wrong with you. And as I mentioned earlier, it is normal for autistic people to feel this way because, again, we're in a world where we are minorities. We are catering to neurotypical standards. We're stuck in environments where nothing makes sense and the only option is to adapt. And I have noticed in terms of autism and feeling inadequate about not being able to adjust, I notice a lot that there is next to no support. So, in my adult years, I'm mostly supporting myself, right? I have to accommodate myself, even though I'm in a place where I don't want to socialize with a lot of people because I find that people have demonic energies. And this is a term I have started using in my YouTube videos, and I'm going to be using it more often in those videos as well as this podcast because I do have a point to what I'm saying. A lot of people have demonic energies. So, what I mean by this is most people are not to be trusted, most people expect something from you, and most relationships are transactional. So, once you are no longer useful, you're discarded. So, I've had to support myself because I don't have a choice, right? I go to work not because I want to, but because unless there's an alternative way of generating income, I don't have a choice. And, I have to be normal in most situations. Even if I'm doing something as simple as going to a fucking supermarket, I have to act normal because if I don't adhere to neurotypical standards, then I really do question what's wrong. I really do. And I guess, it's like a day to day thing because when you have had to deal with this for a long time, when you've had to deal with feeling inadequate, feeling like you're not good enough, you really believe that. And it's taken me a long time to break out of that mindset. Although, when I'm at my lowest, that mindset, that negativity comes back. So it's like a virus where, you can't get rid of it easily because it's always going to come back, or it's like an annoying fly that you just want to swat. It always comes back. So I have to sort of remind myself that I am good at certain things. I do have talents. But again, in most places, like at work, my talents, my creativity is not nurtured. So I more or less have to find a place where I can spread my wings because in traditional corporate environments, for example, you can't really do that because that's a problem. And, speaking of other things, I suppose this applies to people with ADHD as well. Again, adjusting in a place that doesn't fit you. And, this is a bit funny because there is a website I sometimes go on called the National Autistic Society. So there's a forum and a lot of people post about different things pertaining to autism, just daily life. So I actually asked a question in the forum about why traditional jobs are so incompatible with us. And it does relate to inadequacy because, I mean, in traditional working environments, you have to deal with these underlying things, office politics and drama. You have to deal with confusing hierarchical structures, social cues that don't make sense, unwritten rules. And, there's a comment here that someone wrote where someone says that if you're not neurotypical, it's a fault. So this is where the inadequacy comes in because your faults get highlighted, especially in front of other people. So it's like, when you're in school and I don't know, you've done something naughty. Well, I don't know how it was for you in terms of your education, because obviously people finish education at different times, so things do change. But in my experience of, say, secondary school, if you did something naughty, something as simple as, I don't know, forgetting your homework, even if it was an accident, you would get a behaviour point and that would be subtracted from your achievement point. And then your teacher would do this whole humiliation ritual in the form class where they're reading out how much achievement and behaviour points you've got. And if you were a good student who even got 1 point, as in one demerit, everyone around you is like, ooh and ah. And sometimes that actually used to happen to me. And it would get to a point where I'd feel humiliated because the teacher's just reading all my faults out to the rest of the class. So again, the inadequacy kicks in there. And this is the thing is, you know, neurotypicals, and I'm not saying every neurotypical person is like this, because I do have neurotypical people in my life who accept me as I am, but for most of them, life in the workplace is like a game because they want to fix you, right? So they want to fix what's wrong with you, and you're like a piece of clay where you're molded into the template that they want, right? So like at work, you have to be the ideal employee, the team player, the one that goes, you know, fucking above and beyond, right? So the employer is molding you like that piece of wet clay, and then you're stuck in the kiln, and once you're, you know, all dried up in the kiln, you can't free yourself because you've been molded into what that employer wants you to be. And that's the thing is, you know, sorry, if you have faults or whatever and certain impairments, no one really cares. And that's something I've learned myself. Nobody cares. Therefore, I have to learn to support myself and find the right people as well that actually want to be a part of my life, not people who will just, you know, mold me into what they want. So, you know, I hope you have enjoyed this short episode on the subject of autism and inadequacy. So let me know what you think. And if you are autistic, or even if you're just somebody who feels inadequate, even if you're neurotypical or you have some other form of neurodivergence, you know, let me know about your experiences, because I think it's important to, say, start discussions. So in the next few weeks, maybe next week, depending on how things go with life, I am going to be releasing the next episode, which talks about autism and alcohol and how alcohol does affect the mind and the way autistic people do things. So I hope you enjoy your Sunday, get some rest because you'll need it before the dreaded work week, because as usual, it's same shit, different week. Take care and see you soon. Bye for now.